Um, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you said 5 paragraphs. It's 5 paragraphs. Is it 5 paragraphs? One, two, three, four. It's four, but they're like chunky and it's
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of a motherfucker. But
I
it's written.
usually think 5 because I make 5 students read it. I break up the second to the last paragraph. The last paragraph's short, and then the second to last is really, really fucking long. The
Yeah,
first
that's
time
like
I ever,
2 paragraphs, basically.
first time, the first time I ever tried teaching, my very first class, I tried to read this cold to my students at the end of class without them even like having it on the board. To show you how dumb I was. You know, like it's not something that the human brain is conditioned to listen to, like read by one person. We can make it like I make it fun because I give this to my students. I tell them to find a thesis in it and write a thesis. Right, so like convince me that you know what the point of this thing is, and then come
Yeah.
to class and we're all going to read it together. And I break up the 5 or 4 paragraphs into 5, and I give them to the students, and it's an exercise in close reading, but
How does that usually go? I mean, it's
it,
written and like it's really it's not an easy thing to read. I didn't even think about reading it out loud. It's
it goes.
what I mean is like the syntax is kind of like wild. It's not
You
like
know,
it's kind of dense. I guess I'd say dense because it's like packed with imagery and it's just the syntax is just like fucking crazy and almost nonsensical sometimes.
well, yeah, I mean, Aggie goes a little berserk. For example, the line "Like God by the sparrows fall," you know, like
Right.
just throwing or the man. I was trying to pull this up on my iPad, but my iPad can't connect to the Wi-Fi. But I think it goes. They stood militant against an invisible line like urinating children, or something like that. Throw that line at my students, and I try to get them. We spend like 10, 15 minutes just trying to understand what he's saying there. It's great. It's great. I love this fucking piece, man.
Right. Yeah.
This,
Yeah,
yeah, this is the,
it's kind of like reading Milton or something like in a different like a slightly different language, like old like Shakespeare, some from that back in the day.
well, you take language, and your average story by a really good author, let's say, is going at like 60, 70 miles an hour. Philip Roth at certain points of Sabbath Theater is going fucking 100, 120. This is like somebody who's going like fucking 400 miles an hour, throughout the whole piece until, well, not necessarily through the whole piece. He starts slow and he ends slow, but he
Hmm.
picks up speed fucking fast, man. Um, and even the first line, we were talking now of a time where I was so successfully disguised to myself as a child. Even that is, even though it's not necessarily fast line per se, quote unquote, it's
You got to read it
still,
twice.
yeah, it's still a line that, gives you pause and makes you think, like, what did he mean by that? And so that's another thing I would just do. I just stop my students right there and be like, what does he mean by that? Just
Yeah.
look at a sea of blank faces and try and get them to break language down and
Yeah.
like start understanding what meaning is.
It kind of makes me think about the more straightforward lines because there are lines like that. Like the first half of that sentence is very straightforward, and this is what we're talking about. The start of the next paragraph is the same way, but it is of these evenings I speak. It doesn't, and he's talking about the kids. He's not, and he goes on to say, it's not of the games children play in the evening that I want to speak now. And this is like how he shifts.
Yeah.
But he has like this really, anyway, my point is he has this very like straightforward way of like talking and then like kind of fucking it up a little bit. And it still makes sense. It just makes you like kind of think about it a little bit more.
Everything in the piece makes sense. It's just it's going so fast, some of it,
Hmm.
um, that you miss the meaning, or you're tripped up by the meaning. It's like, for example, Andre Du Bois. We were talking about, I don't know if it was last time or the time before that, but very much longer piece, still going fairly fast at certain parts, especially in the middle of the climax where he's talking about all this stuff going on with his daughter. But you understand every sentence by itself. And these, like with Agee, you have sentences that by themselves could trip you up, like the two I just read. Um, but
You
everything
know,
makes sense.
it's kind of written like a fever dream or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like a whirlwind of language. It resists. Like you asked me to like come up with a thesis, but I mean, of course you can do that by the time you finish it. But as you're reading, it kind of like resists analysis almost, and you just kind of like you just gotta read it, get through it, and yeah, and it kind of it creates this weird feeling that it creates the exact feeling that he's going for, which is to be this boy and experience this, evening.
Well, that's part of the point. Part of what he's trying to do is to make you feel like a young child
Yeah,
experiencing all these things.
yeah, inadvertently just
Um,
came up with a thesis for this thing.
yeah, I mean I think that's part of the meaning. This is what it's like to be a child and to be captivated by the sounds of everything and the smells of everything and
Yeah.
the music that's just inherent. It's not just in the hoses, but in the crickets and in this moment in time, which is now far gone. Everybody in that story is dead. It's just part of life is that everything around you um, evaporates.
Yeah, that's actually
But
the thesis. That's my thesis. Got it. You pretty much said it.
I think that's part of it. See, if you were one of my students, I'd be like, that's like 75% of it. But there is another 25% that most people miss. And it has to do with the imagery of the other people going around, that he's observing, especially as it pertains to adults. The difference between being a child and being an adult, and really being anybody else in that short story or whatever you want to call it, that long poem that isn't James Agee, because it's not just that everything dies. Um, it's
Well, can I?
Go ahead, go ahead, make
So,
a case.
so I got two here. Thesis one. This is like the hoity-toity when I first read it. To recognize the miracle of life, how rare in time it is to be next to those who love you. To remind yourself to see it new again. To recognize the mystery of the self. The mystery of the self is kind of like in that last line of the story, where he says he describes all the people that his people, his uncle, aunt, mom, dad, will not
They're
ever tell
all
me who
good
I
to me.
am.
They are all good to me, but none of them can tell me who I am. By the way, do you
Yeah.
ever listen to the opera?
Oh shit! I fucking forgot to do that.
Dude, do it after. I mean, it's not the whole piece. It's just the
Yeah.
second to last paragraph and the last paragraph. It actually it's 4 minutes of just singing the lines as they are, with
Hmm.
music behind. But it starts with the horses drawing the buggy and all of that, that's towards the end of the piece. To me, it kind of defeats the purpose um of this essay or whatever it is. By the way, it's another thing about this piece is it really defies any. Not only does it defy meaning, it defies any label that you want to put on it. You can't call it a poem. You can't call it a short story. You can't call it an essay.
Hmm.
You can't call it anything. It's just something that he wrote. It's actually in the
Yeah. Yeah.
it's in the beginning of his novel, A Death in the Family, and I bought that book hoping that the rest of the book was written like that, and unfortunately, it's not. Um,
Yeah, he was just showing
but
off. Here's this one-off
yeah,
thing that I can never hope to even come close to creating, and here's the rest of this fucking book. You know
yeah,
what? Fucking not I like Karen Forshay's memoir about her time in El Salvador, but she begins with this basically prose poem that's just beautiful and like horrifying. It's about the time she was just on the road with shit, what's his name? The guy that she's with in the Colonel. the one that says without
One that
saying a
takes
word,
you
say
to El
nothing.
Salvador. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so she starts off with this basic like prose poem, and then it's like it's a chapter, and you're like, damn, is this she can write? Holy crap! And then it just goes into like normal prose, after that. So it's like, but I guess there is
Yeah.
there's it's different, different types of writing for different aims, I guess. Like in the beginning, she's just trying to like put you there, and that's kind of writing I think you and I really love. That's what this story definitely does. And then like the exposition writing, like she has to like kind of tell the story as well, like kind of like put the nuts and bolts together as well before dipping back in.
I mean, I wish she wouldn't. I wish
Yeah.
that all the great writers would just trust that if they show everything, readers would experience it as if they were living through it. And I
Yeah.
mean, it really goes back to what we call trusting the reader. You got to
Hmm.
trust them to understand that you're not just making up images for the fuck of it, that you're actually trying to tell a story, and that the images and the things that you're hearing and the things that you're experiencing as you're writing are going to create a dream in the reader. And
Right.
to me, that's the magic of real writing. Is you go to a good poetry reading or whatever, and you close your eyes, and you're just wherever the reader is, or the speaker is, I should say.
Mm. Yeah.
But and if ever there was a piece that does that, it's this one.
Yeah. It also makes like it just makes the piece more dynamic for the every reader. Like you can come up with your kind of your own idea of what it is. So that's why like your question of what's the point of this story. That's why it's a good one because every class, every student's gonna have like their own like idea of what that is. Really, there's no fucking right answer. I mean, that's the old cliche with literature. There's no right answer, but when you write like that, like there really isn't. Like it could mean anything to anyone on any given day. Like I got a completely different meaning reading it this time than I did months and months ago, the first or years ago when I first read it, and even from yesterday when I read it again for the first time after years is different from when I read it today. Like, and it had, another weird thing. It had a more powerful effect on me today, I guess, because of whatever mood I'm in. And yeah, it's fucking wild.
It is. I taught this for 7 years, and it wasn't until I took a class with Loraka, who just keeps popping up in these discussions. But I mean, he really did, and he really does continue to change the way that I think about literature. And he would break down. He broke down this short story called "A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings," and he did it by just examining the images. And I was like, I went to my class and I gave it, and I was like, looking at the images of the adults in this piece. And it really solidified what I think to be the meaning, to me at least. So it's my class. I mean, there's a reason that I teach this way because most writers, the point of their pieces very often is that you're going to die and that life is hard and life is they're evil people and life is unfair and you do the right thing so often and still bad stuff happens to you. Andre Du Bois, by the way, and Bullet in the Brain, both classic examples of that atypical writer. I'm going to show you, like, here's a guy who loves his daughter so much that he's going to commit like the most horrendous act he can think of to protect her. And here's another guy
Yeah.
who's lost his love of life and his love of his career and thinks that everything's a parody, and he gets shot in the brain, and the bullet is the only thing that can make him remember for a milliseconds or whatever it was, his time in his life where he didn't feel that way. Well, here's a piece that is doing the opposite, that is making a case that so often in life we forget that we have this thing called sentience or agency and that we can live it and experience it however we want. We can, if we're so inclined, we can see the music, quote unquote. I mean, it sounds corny when you reduce it that way, but he literally does. hear violins in the goddamn hoses that all the fathers are playing, and he compare. I mean, there's a reason that they took this and they turned it into music is because it's all about hearing, the music and being mystified by life just in its totality. The horses and the people and the faces and the smells and the lightning bugs and the toads, just everything around him all at once. And he's really trying to just capture the moments of everything going on around him so that you're there. But there is a more subtle thesis, in my opinion, um, or an argument he makes about adults as he's going through the piece. You'll notice that when the men come out, their necks look, he calls it tall and shy, and the women who are walking around measuring the sugar,
Mm-hmm.
he compares it to the invisible path of bees. The traceless invisible path of bees, so much like clockwork.
So what is he trying to
And
do? You think? What is he trying to say or imply?
well, think about it. And he's calling all these men, their faces are anonymous.
Yeah, that
And
line
they're
stuck out
all
to me a lot. The face nearly
well, like
anonymous rather,
like
hosing
you're
their
in a
lawns.
dream. It's like you're in a fucking dream. You can't remember the faces of the people there. But it's also an argument. Their faces don't matter because they're all living the same life. They're all watering the fucking lawns at the same time. They're eating supper at the same time. Most of them have the same jobs, clerical, and they have houses that all look the same. And um snail like and withdrawn. He compares them to fucking snails. And I make this argument to my students that this is a piece about realizing at a young age that we're all doomed to lose our childlike mysticism and reverence for the world. And call it whatever you want, your innocence or your playfulness, your childishness. Um, we're all at some point your curiosity going to lose it. And
Yeah,
in that sense, it's kind of sad. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't
Craig.
mean
I
to.
think you're reading into this with your own little like fucking dour lens. The fucking world. Jesus Christ, man! I love this story. Don't ruin it for me. No, no, I definitely could see that. It's definitely there, and that's what I mean by like it. The story is dynamic, because it
Well,
doesn't tell you what it means. You have to fucking figure it out for yourself.
well, that's why I wanted you to listen to the goddamn opera because the one thing that the opera gets right is when he gets to the end. At least the few that I've seen, the opera singer sings those last lines with so much rage. he
Really?
brings it to this crescendo and he's like, none of them can tell me who I am because none of them know who they fucking are. That's how I read it, anyways. I love them. I'll never stop loving them. But at whatever age he was when he is experiencing this, he discovers his own agency and um
Yeah.
and it's captured in that piece. That's why I love it so much, is because this is a piece about how all of us can do whatever we want with our lives. You know, you can be whatever, you can do whatever, everything, like all these barriers and all these labels, all these definitions that we string up and all these walls we string up around ourselves are just in our head for the most part. I mean, you can water your lawn at 3 a.m. Who cares, right?
Right.
Live
Right. Right.
live a unique life. I think is the point of the piece, and nobody does. So
Well,
in that sense, I mean,
or yeah, it is. I mean, that's a really beautiful way of like looking at it, I guess, and kind of sad though too. I don't know, man. You you probably read this thing like what 100 times by now. just
Maybe more than that.
reading it fresh, the faces of your neighbors are anonymous. There's no like, as a kid, I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
maybe not. Maybe that's not exactly true. Not anonymous, but nearly anonymous is how you put it. So that's kind of a more accurate way of putting it. So like, taken at face value, it doesn't like imply any deep meaning. But I guess you could if you put it in context with the other images around it. But yeah, anyway, the way I took it was just like, I'm seeing the world through the eyes of a kid, and it does get to that ending. That kind of like some light bulb turns on for him, I guess, that normally you wouldn't get from a child's perspective. This is from a. How old is he? Does it say? Is this a kid? 10 years old, maybe. It is all in first person and present tense. So anyway, so yeah, that's how I kind of took it as like a kind of a dumb way, just he's just kind of rendering the images, and that is kind of how you see the world as a kid, a little bit.
absolutely. I don't doubt that. I think both readings. That's why I tell my students I would accept the reading that it's just about the beauty of life. If you wanted to make that case to me, it's just about the beauty of being alive. And again, when you have a piece where the author isn't talking to you per se, but showing you everything, it goes back to Hills Like White Elephants also too. Like the author shows you everything and tells you nothing. You can kind of draw your own thesis as to what it means to you. But I think that I mean, I got the piece up finally.
Okay.
The Traceless Path of Bees.
Where's this at? On the first page?
Okay, so
First, second paragraph. Maybe that's easier.
second paragraph is but it is of the evenings. We can start there.
Mm-hmm.
The children ran out first, hell bent and yelling those names by which they were known. Then the fathers sank out leisurely, cross suspenders, their collars removed, their necks looking tall and shy. The mothers stayed back in the kitchen, washing and drying, putting things away, recrossing their traceless footsteps like the lifetime journey of bees, measuring out the dry cocoa for breakfast. When they came out, they had all taken off their aprons, and their skirts were dampened, and they sat on rockers on porches quietly. It's not of the games, blah blah blah, but that I wish to speak, but the contemporaneous, meaning all at once atmosphere that has little to do with them, that of the fathers of families, each in his own space of lawn, his shirt fish-like pale in the unnatural light, and his face nearly anonymous, posing their lawns. And then instead of describing the faces, he describes the sound of the nozzles, which to me like makes it all the more better, because they themselves aren't unique. It's their nozzles that are unique, and you can if you wanted you could draw a Freudian analysis from that as to what he's really talking about.
All right, Craig. Fucking Freud again. Like what? Never mind.
And
This
so rest
reminds
of
me
the
of our first talk when we were talking about the Hemingway story. Is like his fucking inept sword keeps bending and breaking, trying to stab this fucking bull.
So he sticks it all the way in up to his shoulder.
And so the sound is like that's a cool thing that this that Agee does. Agee. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
This cool thing he's doing is describing the sound as like a feeling, because on the next page, on the next paragraph, he compares that sound to the sound of
Crickets. The crickets in the
crickets.
local.
Yeah. So like, not like so for me, it like makes me want to resist analyzing what he's trying to say about adults or whatever. And
but wait, he
okay.
says this is the bottom of the third paragraph. Third paragraph being the one that starts with these sweet pale streamings.
Mm-hmm.
Go down to about halfway. to where it says, God damn it, I just lost it.
It's so easy to get lost in these paragraphs. They're crazy.
Well, it would help if I wasn't looking at this on my fucking phone. um,
Yeah,
where is it? Okay, now only two, and now only one is left.
I see it.
See that? And you see only ghost-like shirt with the sleeve garters and sober mystery of his mild face, like the lifted face of large cattle, inquiring of your presence in a pitch dark pool of meadow. And now he too is gone.
Gosh,
So
gosh.
they went from slugs and bees to large inquiring cattle. You know,
Yeah, it's pretty hard
and
to.
first starting with anonymous. I mean, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that he's not saying something about adults and what they look like in their day-to-day routines and making
You know,
arguments about them.
it does go with the ending too. When you think about what he's trying to say about his family, he's trying to redeem them in a way at the end. Here's the line. Let me get it for you. And who shall ever tell the sorrow of being on this earth, lying on quilted grass in summer evening among the sounds of night? May God bless my people, my uncle, my aunt, my mom, my good father. Oh, we'll remember them kindly in their time of trouble and in the hour of their taking away. So he's like, don't just, he doesn't want you to look at them like he's looking at the people around him, the neighbors and adults, I guess, how you put it. But
Right? He's not trying to make a harsh judgment of his neighbors or of his family. Even he's just trying to make a statement about adulthood itself. You know, that's how I read it. Is it's an indictment of what this world does in the passage of childhood to adulthood. It strips you of your humanity, essentially. It strips you of your curiosity. It strips you of the fun that you take, the pleasure you take out of life, and it turns you into, you know, an adult, which is somebody who worries about mortgages and dishes and fucking the lawn and ironing clothes and washing clothes and um
yeah, yeah, you forget about.
mortgages and life insurance and medical bills and the paint on the house. You worry about all this shit that's all temporary, and you think that you're convinced by the world, as Bill Hicks would say, that that all this matters, that you're not just on a ride. you know you forget that in the passage of childhood to adulthood. You're just on a fucking ride, and it's all headed to the same place. So many people forget that they're supposed to be enjoying it,
Yeah,
which really, again, like, not to be too harsh on that may be the point of Tobias. I mean, I feel like that's the same point as Tobias Wolff was trying to make, just in a more jaded sense. I'm going to show you, instead of showing you like the beauty of childhood, I'm going to show you the horrors of adulthood and what this world can turn you
yeah,
into.
yeah. It's
So
definitely making
one
the same
thing,
point in an opposite way. An opposite way of telling a story, and they're both anomalies. We talked about that last time. They're like anomalies, but they're all still doing the same thing, which is weird.
well, isn't that what every artist is trying to do ultimately, is to get people to learn to enjoy life and learn to be creative and learn to have fun and learn that all this is just temporary. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah,
get them
yeah. When
to
you read a good story or poem or play, you watch a good play, a movie, it just kind of wakes you up a little bit, and it takes you outside of yourself a little bit, and it like frees you of the routine of life. you know,
I mean, where do you
Traveling
get that?
does that too, man. Traveling
Absolutely,
does that. That's why
absolutely.
people love it.
I was just talking to a buddy of mine, Kevin, about that. He travels all over the world, but yeah, it
And
opens
it's
your mind to.
by the way, Craig, it's fucking exhausting traveling and like opening your mind, like doing that all the time, like diving into a story, good piece of art. It's like shit, man. It's like it's less. I guess traveling is a little bit more like physically exhausting, but it's tough, man. It's tough. That's why people resist it, I think, because it's hard to keep doing it over and over and over again.
Especially when you have a conventional job, a 9 to 5. Are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Oh yeah,
I was working hard labor. The last thing in the fucking world I want to do is go home and read something or write something. And it's just like, I always want to turn on fucking Family Guy. You know?
right. It's like you're in
I'm
survival mode at that point.
yeah, dude. And it's the hell of life is that so many things that need to be done restrict you from living that kind of life. Fortunately, poor guys out there working fucking 50, 60 hours. Spring training, they're out there working 100 hours a week doing physical labor. You know, that you think that guy's got time for a fucking poem?
Florida,
Um,
Florida
right.
heat.
Yep.
Can barely
And
stand to drive through in an AC car, man.
yeah, it is unfathomable how hard some people work in this country and really all over the world. How much for like not only so little pay, but such a little end result. They're out there busting their fucking ass to rebuild fucking baseball fields after baseball players play on them. Are you fucking kidding me? You know, breaking their neck for this shit, or they're out there at Trump, like cutting the fucking um the uh the palm trees for these rich motherfuckers who wouldn't spit on them to save their life. Like,
I just had the absurd
it's
thought of
life.
like, wouldn't it be funny if it was also the baseball player's job to maintain the field they play on?
It should be.
That would make
It
it
really
home
should be.
field. That's home field advantage right there, man. I know where all the dips and ruts are in this fucking field.
It really should be.
Or Trump out there on his own golf course, making sure it's pristine. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then call it Trump's. Whatever. What the fuck? Where did you work again? What's it called? Trump's.
Trump International Golf Course. They did call it Trump.
Trump golf course. Yep. Didn't call it that.
It was his favorite golf course on the whole planet. And it's gorgeous inside. I mean, you go out there and you fucking feel like this kid in this story. You're like, especially when the sun's just getting over the horizon, you can see every little speck of dew on the grass and these gorgeous waterfalls and just everything's so well maintained. It's such a specific type of grass. And
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
only way you could experience it is if you're Trump or one of these rich fuckers or the people working on it. Because I lived in West Palm Beach for my whole life, and whenever I drove past it, all I saw was this giant hedge.
dude, my mom, when I was a kid, we got something in the mail. I forget what it's called, but it was this thing. It's this school project where if you get it, you have to take pictures in front of certain monuments. And my mom took me to Trump, and I was so embarrassed. She took me to Trump with my guitar. I have no idea why, but
Wait, you have a picture of you as a kid
there's
with
a
a guitar?
picture of me
Outside of
holding my
Trump?
fucking electric guitar and like
That's
10 years,
absurd.
12 years old in front of Trump International Golf Course because I didn't play golf, so I didn't have a golf club. But while we're out there and she's taking pictures, we're walking back to the car, and a security officer walks by and asks us what the fuck we're doing. And he's like, you guys can't be here. You can't be on this sidewalk in front of this." We're like, dude, we're not trying to go in. um,
Oh my god,
yeah,
it's like that everywhere. Not even a Trump. I was literally just taking a picture of my bicycle a few weeks back, and it's like in a back alley somewhere, and it happens to be near the entrance to this business, and this guy starts hassling me like, you can't be here, right? Where do you live? I'm like, oh my god, I'm just gonna leave. I'm not gonna fight this fat fuck over this, being
where do you
here.
live?
I literally it's right next to my neighborhood. You can see my building. I'm like, right there, motherfucker. Where do you live?
Yeah, what's your name? What's your mom's name? What's her maiden name?
Isn't it weird?
What's your fucking
People
social
have
security number?
like he doesn't own that. He definitely doesn't own that place. He just works there. He's like the manager or something, right?
Where do you live?
He just took ownership of it. Like he owned the place. Crazy. Just like that's kind of the security person's job is to be that guy for Trump. Take ownership of it, right? Get people the fuck away.
Talk about a job that's going to make you forget that you're ever a child. It's going around
bullying children.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that story. I had one other point to bring up. was teaching this for 7 years, and I never knew what that line meant.
Which one?
God by the sparrows fall. Uh, second paragraph, I
Yes,
believe.
yeah. It's at the very end of it.
Like God by the sparrows fall. So I had a student last semester. I mentioned that in class. I'm like, I have no idea what that means.
Don't
And
you love doing that to them?
no, I
Especially if
love
it's
it.
true. Like, I really don't know. And they get excited, man. They're like,
Well,
really?
this student went above and beyond and like looked it up, and it's a Bible quote that apparently means um I forget the context, but essentially the typical Christian interpretation of the quote means that God takes count of every living thing on this planet. And I was like, man, what a beautiful sentiment. Not even from
What the fuck did you just
uh,
say? Cinnamon bun? You mean simile?
what a beautiful sentiment, sentiment.
Oh,
What a
sentiment.
beautiful, yeah.
Sorry.
What I
I
think,
couldn't
synonym?
resist busting your
What a
balls there.
beautiful sentiment. What a beautiful sentiment, bud. That fucking student was.
It is a simile, though, right? Like God as well. But it is, yeah, you're right. That's so cool, man, that you had a student look it up.
She was awesome. I told her if I ever brought this piece up again, I'd always mention her. I think that ties to the theme also that his life matters, and he's here for a reason, even if that reason is totally subjective. Um, and I think that's the point of the piece. You read that, and it's like being a kid again, and it's self-contained, and it's just this little thing. It doesn't even cost a penny. You just
Yeah.
read it. You remember the mystery of when you were a kid, and everything was new, and everything was endless. That's the other thing. It's just the total feeling of endlessness. How
Mm.
everything's interconnected and everything is all encompassing in a way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
People
you can.
people who do psychedelics talk like that too. Everything's connected and
Well,
endless.
it's one of the things that hits you when you read or when you take mushrooms is like how little you know about everything going on around you. Like I'm standing in
Yeah,
this room right now. I have no idea how this Gatorade bottle was made at
dude,
all.
you're drinking Gatorade too? I just
Yeah.
downed the whole fucking bottle of it while we're talking. That's so weird.
Well, and I guarantee you have no idea where that bottle came from, who made it,
I don't
how
know
it
if
was
I want to
made.
know.
Yeah, you probably don't. You don't know what's in it. Like, what the fuck is Gatorade?
Are you drinking zero, the sugared one? Because I don't know what the
Yeah, I'm
zero.
thinking.
I don't. What?
I hate the zero, but unfortunately, that's what I got. It's a
You're
zero.
gonna get zero too, huh? Damn, man.
Uh,
Yeah. What is the zero? Why does it taste so sweet? The damn
I don't know.
circleose. I don't know what circleose is.
All I know is I think it was the Florida. Like, I don't think. Well, obviously, it wasn't the Florida Gators, but it was somebody in Gainesville.
That,
Uh,
I think
built
it's
it
during a football game or for a
right.
football
Well,
team.
it was for the Florida Gators. It was. I know it was made for them, and it was something to drink that would replenish electrolytes because they wanted an edge. Since
Mhm.
everybody else was just drinking water at the time, they were like, "Well, let's try this drink over here. It doesn't just
Put some sugar and salt in it.
whatever the hell else they put in it. I don't even know what an electrolyte is, but but goddamn, those things don't sell their ass off. So that's what little I know about Gatorade, but that's nothing. Fucking nothing. It's probably not even true. you know.
I was just thinking how stupid we sound talking about how Gatorade was made
I
compared to
mean,
like talking about stories or something.
well, I just finished Stephen King's It, and there's so much history in the town of Derry, and one of the themes of that novel is that so much of the history has gone unrecorded, and so much of the history has been bastardized because nobody wants to talk about the real problems of this town, Derry. And so this guy takes it upon himself to start interviewing like all these old people about what really happened. And you realize like you don't know anything about the town you're living in. You don't know anything about the
Damn.
people there. I mean, we all are still living in that world. Everybody's face is anonymous to us, so you can take it to mean that also that we live in this world in which we really don't like. Honestly, we're all more like those neighbors than we are like this kid, especially at 34. We don't know our neighbors. We don't. Most that you give them is just a hi or a hello. So you can take it to mean an indoctrination of that, or not an indoctrination, but an indictment of that.
Yeah,
Also, how
yeah,
little we know
especially
about the people around us.
especially how we live in our like apartment buildings, super anonymous. That's kind of the whole point of them, I think.
I
I
think
feel
so
like
too.
I feel like not completely alone, but also like don't talk to me. I don't want to know you.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Anyways, uh, that's all I
Well,
have to say about it. Do you want to have anything else to say about the piece?
I just wanted to like say how like it's just so weirdly written, just to kind of get back down to earth a little bit with it. Do you remember how he's describing a car passing by in this? It's like a mini paragraph inside of this giant second to last paragraph. A streetcar
Yeah,
rising, its iron moan, stopping, belling and starting, sturdiest, rousing and rising.
it's for us.
Again, its iron. Sator, sorry.
Yeah,
Again, its iron increasing moan and swimming its gold windows and straw seats on pass and bleak spark crackling and cursing above it like a small malignant spirit set to dog its tracks. The iron wine rises on rising speed, still risen, faints, halts. The faint stinging bell rises again, still fainter, fainting, lifting, lifts, faint, forgone, forgotten. Holy shit!
that's a
If
fucking
you
sentence,
if
huh?
you wanted me to read that in a class, I'd be like, as soon as you've like corrected me at what is that word? I don't even know what that. I didn't even look it
It's
up.
for us.
I
I
would
think it
be like,
means
fuck
loud.
this. But by the time you get to the end of the sentence, it like wins you back over because it's just so beautiful. I didn't read it beautifully, but it's written beautifully, and I
Yeah,
don't like.
Sator means noisy or labored, so it's like chugging along.
Yeah, you basically get that sense when you're reading it. So it's like,
Thanks for gone, forgotten.
yeah, like
Yeah.
how it ends too. It's like its own little story of the car, and it kind of goes along with your thesis of like being a kid. It's kind of how you see everything. I remember,
I mean,
I remember
you have
looking
a
at.
poem about this, about driving with your dad, and just how mystified you were by the sounds of a real car and what it
Oh yeah,
really meant to drive one. And by the
yeah,
way, out of everybody in our group, nobody writes more about their childhood than you do, dude. As far as I can tell. Uh, so this should be a piece you go back to, man. Be like, you know, I know. I mean, it's different when you're 22, going back to 10, than when you're 34 and you're married and you're paying bills and shit. But you
yeah.
know, but so I know it's not something that's easy to just call back, but um, something I've been thinking a lot about is just the feeling of childhood. Stephen King's best stuff was always about childhood and being able to go back and capture that feeling of everything being new. There's this word for it. It's the opposite of deja vu. I think it's called jamais vu, where everything's instead of everything being familiar, everything is unfamiliar and everything
Yeah.
is new, and you have absolutely no connection to anything
Right.
around you.
I used to
Um,
when I first, and this goes along with your point. I think I was like 14, 13 years old, and I'm like, I want to. I looked up on Google how to be an artist. Like, I guess I was drawing or something back then. I don't know. I don't think I had a clue what the fuck I wanted to do. I was just like, I want to be an artist. And like one of the first things that came up was like you have to look at everything new again, and like
yeah,
everything you see has to feel fresh or whatever. And I remember walking around or going to the store with my mom and just looking up the giant Kmart sign in Boynton Beach and trying to like and just like dissecting or studying rather the like curves of the letters. You know how they like, you know how like blocky they are, or they used to be back.
Someday it's just gonna appear in a story. the K curve that.
But you know what? I wasn't thinking of the time in the car with my dad. Although that poem is really about that, it's about like the kind of the novelty of that situation. Well, when I was a kid, I used to just like stare out the windows when my mom was driving me home from school. Like, I mean, a little kid, like 5, 6 years old, and I just look at all the flowers, and I was like, I want to give my mom a flower. And then I was thinking about the flowers we were passing and how they could never be like loved, and they will just die eventually with no one really appreciating them.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was sad even back then, but
I don't know if it's sad or cool, man, or weird.
dude, I used to think about that all the time with everything. Like, I might have told you this one, but like when I was a kid and going like searching for pumpkins, you know how you always like try to find the perfect pumpkin, but there's always those like shitty fucking deformed pumpkins that nobody's ever gonna buy. I'd always be like,
I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I'd feel bad for them too. I'd be like, man, they're just gonna be thrown away. Nobody's in a car. Nobody's gonna cut them up. They're the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
nobody's gonna carve ridiculous faces in them or carve witches in them or anything.
Yeah. Anyway, that just made me.
I mean, it's something you lose in childhood to adulthood is caring about the plight of pumpkins.
Like, yeah,
the plight of pumpkins. This should be the title of a poem at some point. The plight of the pumpkin.
The ugly one. Yeah.
The ugly pumpkin.
Anyway, I didn't mean to derail this. We're trying to wrap this up. That's kind of, I wanted to talk about that because that line, that description is where it's really getting it up its own ass with the language, and I'm kind of like jabbing at it a little bit, but I admire it greatly because I think it's like you can't teach that, man. You can't tell somebody to go write like that. Describe a car, but like within the syntax, kind of like replicate what a car sounds and smells like. Good luck.
Yeah. Replicate
and feels like the feeling of experiencing a car as a kid. That's really what he's doing with all these descriptions. It's like trying to replicate the feeling of experiencing it of the first times. This isn't the first time. It's like the sound of the water coming out of the spigot of all these like neighbors mowing their lawns is like a sound of childhood. The sound of the crickets is like a sound of childhood. It's like almost a comfort. But also like, so it's written like from the viewpoint of a kid, kind of, but it's also like it's really high level like language. So it's like it's written from the perspective of a kid, but like imbued with all this knowledge of the world as well. So it's kind of has this weird dissonance to it. But
right, because if you ask a 10-year-old kid to write this, they just couldn't,
So he's not. Here's ultimately what I'm trying to say is that he's not just like showing these images and having them imbue meaning. Like he's using language as a way to show like language doesn't have to be what you think it is either. It's like a completely new. Right. I'm writing this in a new way. At least it feels new to me. Fucking, how old is this story, Craig? I don't know when it was written. It's got to be ancient.
Well, it's over 100. The time that he's writing about is over 100 years old. It's 110.
Right. Yeah, so maybe this is like 70, 80 years, 50, whatever it is. But yeah, it's the language itself is like fresh, the way it's written. So kind of cool.
There's nothing else like it in the world.
And it's not contrived either, because you know how poets can be with language. They can just say, "Oh, it's all about language." No, it's not just about the language. He's writing it in an interesting way, and also, showing something and saying something about the world and about himself and his family, and all these things. It's childhood,
and about all of us, and about
all of us. Yeah,
and that's why it's not up its own ass too much, at least. You know what I mean? If you start thinking around those lines, you start looking at like everybody who gets really good at the piano or gets really good at with a violin is up their own ass. It's like it's not that they're up their own ass all the time. Anyways, sometimes they're just really fucking good. I don't listen to Wu-Tang and go, man, these guys are up their own ass, fucking all these clever like lyrics and wordplay and all these
Beat
crazy stories. You know,
samples.
this fucking Riz is just up his own ass. That's all that is. Give me some fucking, give me some Miley Cyrus. Like I don't know. To me, when
I
when
said
you're
it tongue
really
in
good
cheek.
at
I wasn't
something,
being serious, but just just to clear the
no, but
air.
it's worth talking about. The difference between those things is when somebody can't do it,
Oh
but
yeah,
tries to just for the sake of doing it. Language poets, sad to say, a lot of the times, including E. E. Cummings, who would sometimes drift off into fucking total nonsensical poems. It's a guy who could both do it and would occasionally get up his own ass.
yep. We all do it. We all do it.
Of
I
course,
mean,
part of
I'll
being
speak
human.
for
Also,
myself. I definitely do it
I've
sometimes.
never been up my own ass.
No, no, Craig,
Yeah, right.
you're a saint.
Yeah, like um, I think that's the point of art too, is to destroy that ego, that part of you that wants to just fucking be cute or be funny or be snarky or be insincere for the sake of laughs.
Like
But I
irony,
think
yeah. It's like irony
right, I
versus
think
sincerity.
I think sincerity is the more dangerous tool of the artist. Well, this isn't necessarily the darkest piece we've read in our discussions even, but um in some ways it is the most dangerous because a lot of people when they read that piece they know A, they could never write like that, and B, they're never going to be that young again, and they're bitter about it because, at whatever age they're at, you're just stuck. Like that's the other truth of life. You're just when you're 40, you're 40. There's no going back to 20. There's no going back to 10.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're
it's a
just at
lesson
that age.
that we learned pretty early because thankfully because of Laraka talked about it a lot. Like you're never gonna be this
Hey,
person
never
again.
gonna be. You're never gonna be this
And
young again,
it has
ever.
like an inherent value. It's like a photograph almost. Sometimes when you write a poem or a story, it's like a picture of your mindset back then. And it gains value in time, if only to yourself. If it sucks, it's still valuable to you, because you can look at yourself again,
Well, you can
who you
understand.
were.
You can understand. It sucked, but you were at least willing to do it and get better. A lot of people it sucks and they give up. You got to suck a lot to be an artist, unfortunately,
Yes.
unless you're a prodigy. But a lot of prodigies end up dying early,
Yeah.
or whatever have you, or
They don't have the gas
or
in the
they
tank
lose it.
to peter
Yep,
out.
they lose it a lot. Um. Anyways, my phone's dying. What are we reading for next time?
I'll let you know. I don't know, man. Well, maybe a
All right.
it's probably gonna be I'm gonna go through your document and find like a story, maybe. Maybe I'll do that. So I was thinking the
Talk about.
Dostoevsky story. Yeah. Let's see.
That'd be great. That's kind of like the polar opposite of this one. Here's a child who fucking dies
Right.
early on in his life. But it's still full of that wonder. I'm actually reading Dostoevsky right now.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
which one?
the Brothers
Novel?
Karamazov. I'm trying to fucking
That's a
beat
tough
my
one.
way through it. Yeah,
I
it's
tried to read that recently, like like a year ago or something, and I you know me, I didn't get that far, but it was I know it's an important
it's
novel and it's written in such a it's dense as fuck.
it's a fucking fog, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning. Crime and Punishment starts in scene and stays in scene for the most part. This one starts in fucking exposition and works its way slowly over the scene. But he has to explain so much even before chapter one. It's like, God damn, dude. You know, like, can we figure out some of this stuff along the way? Just get me to the scenes. Can we get these characters?
Yeah. Good
But
luck, Jordan.
yeah, I'm gonna try. The two pager, the Beggar Boy by Christ Christmas Tree is great. It's another great piece. So
It's only
I
two
can't.
pages?
I think so.
Well,
I think
hot
it's two pages.
damn. We're
Yeah,
doing
man.
that one.
There we go. All right, buddy. I'll try and upload everything by next week, and we'll be caught up.
Well,
I don't know
all
about
right.
the cathedral one though. Like I feel like
Nah, don't do that one. That
that one.
one sucks to listen to. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a great talk. That's the thing. Like, I remember that being a pretty good conversation. But yeah, like it was hard to listen to the audio. I forget how we did that. Do we have those little lav mics, or was it like just a mic in the middle of the table or
I think we
something?
just had one mic, but the problem also
Yeah,
was we were both so nervous and it was so weird to talk about this thing with a mic presence. These sound like a conversation on the phone, and I feel like I listened to the whole audio of Andre Du Bois. I can listen to it again. Like,
I did too the other night. I was like, I had that conversation was rough for me, especially towards the end of it. But listening to it, I was like, oh, this is fine. This is actually
yeah,
nice to listen to. I liked listening to it. Not to suck my own
we
dick, but
listen. My brain just is what it is, and I'm always going to see the, the horror of what we're reading. And I'm just a dour guy, I guess. I don't
yeah.
feel dour.
No, you're
Um,
not. You're really in person. Like, I think you just look at things that way sometimes, like stories and the way the world is, which is hard not to, like looking at what's going on in the world. But so I get it. Um,
I
I
can't,
don't
but
know, man.
I can't talk about stories any other way than how I feel about them. Maybe it's my
Yeah.
father in me,
But yeah.
but
Anyway, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I did kind of like listening to it. I thought it was interesting. It's not like complete shit. At least,
no, I've definitely heard worse podcasts. So
yeah.
we'll figure out what we're doing as
But
we move forward with everything. All right, buddy.
all right, man. I'll talk to you
All
later.
right, man.
Bye.
All right, man. Peace.